Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Faust.
And we are literary agents who took our popular blog to YouTube. We cover all topics publishing. And in the past, we've talked a lot about how one could get a job in publishing, but we've decided to break it down even further and sort of talk about the application and interview experience for getting a job in publishing. So
yes, we're fresh off a new hire. We are fresh off this process. We have a brand new hire at BookEnds. So since we have just been in the trenches with this, we thought we'd talk about it.
Right. So over the next couple of weeks, we will have 3 videos posting, one on the resume, one on the cover letter, and one on the interview, designed to help you nail all 3 of those parts of the interview. So today we're talking about the resume, which Jessica has a lot of feelings about.
I do. And the very first thing I will tell you is whatever your career counselor told you, walk away from it. I have battled with so many interns over the years who asked me to review their resume at the end of their internship, and everything I said conflicted with their career counselor. And I remember one intern kept saying, but my career counselor said, I'm like, your career counselor doesn't hire people.
I watch these every intern, and the interns are just, what?
Yeah.
Pure confusion. But maybe first we should define what a resume is and what goes on it, because the career counselor has one version and Jessica's is very different.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that everybody watching this is looking for a job in publishing. So rather than make a blanket resume that you're going to send out for a job in publishing and a job at finance and a job at the Olive Garden, I'm going to talk about what a resume for a publishing job looks like.
Right.
My very first piece of advice is take the education section that your career counselor told you to put at the top and put it at the bottom. 99% of everybody who's applying for a publishing job has a similar educational background as you. And frankly, for me personally, I don't care.
There might be some industries where, well, there are definitely some industries where a Harvard education is fantastic, but publishing has people from Harvard, from local community college. It doesn't really matter so much.
No, and we have people with English degrees and journalism degrees and history degrees and masters and not masters. And, at the end of the day, it's good you have an education, so put it on your resume, but it's not going to drive our decision to look further at your resume or not. So it's not that important. It's not what's going to make you stand out because it's similar to everybody else.
Right. Agreed. So you then suggest moving experience, which will make you stand out, up to the top.
Yeah, I'm a nut for experience. I mean, I'm convinced I got where I got in my career because of the experience on my resume and not my education or my GPA, which was questionable. And by experience, I mean, I certainly mean publishing experience. If you've had internships, not just in publishing, not just in book publishing, but, an internship at a newspaper, at a magazine, at an ad agency, at anything in sort of the world of words.
Yeah, a job at a bookstore.
Yeah, that all is experience to me. I mean, if you've been writing ad copy, you have some experience that'll pass over to cover copy.
Right.
If you've been writing newspaper articles or copy or editing for a newspaper, well, then that'll, transition over to book editing. So all of those things work. I think the biggest, most everybody is good with experience. I think the one thing that people miss out is that there is experience that some people will see as really important that you might not realize. I waited tables for years. If you have experience in the restaurant business and waited tables, successfully, I know you're organized. I know you can manage people, and I know you can manage projects essentially. And I know you can work under pressure. That says a lot to me about who you are.
Right.
If you've worked in an office of any sort, if you worked your summer job in a medical office or an accountant's office or at the school, you have basic skills that
Yeah.
are basic entry-level skills in publishing.
Yeah, you know how to file stuff. You know how to address an envelope. Did not know how to do that when I started interning at BookEnds. You know all of that stuff, which, I mean, it seems, trivial, but when you add it all up, it gives you a basic know-how in an office, which is what a lot of interns and assistants in entry-level jobs do.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to remember is that most entry-level in publishing is an assistant position, which means that you are answering phones, you are scheduling things on calendars, you are filing, you are filling out databases. All of that basic office work is exactly what is involved in your first publishing job. So it matters. I think the biggest thing that people sort of struggle with this experience thing is, how do you describe it? So I believe in, every resume book, you list your experience, the years you worked, and then you bullet point a list of what your jobs were.
Right.
List the stuff that is going to potentially work towards publishing, and that includes filing.
Well, and I mean, if you're working in a bookstore and you're doing sort of the retail stuff of, working the systems and stocking, that is great experience. And it, like you said, with waiting tables, that does lend to your character and how you manage things. But the things there are stocking the shelves and getting to see who publishes what, or seeing author names and covers and noticing trends in cover designs. Those are all things that do help to your benefit.
Yeah, and we don't need a lot of fancy words.
Right.
There's this sort of rewording and thing of resumes, like the objective, for example, seeking an opportunity that utilizes my wordsmith skill. I don't even know what that means. What do you want? Right. What did you do?
Well, every job, I think the best thing you can do then is read what this job that you're applying for is looking for. Yeah. So then once you see what they're looking for, based on your experience, what you've done that would contribute to that and sort of be equal to or lend itself to how well you can do that aspect of the job.
Yeah, and if you did interesting and different things, even if they're super specific, talk about them. So, I don't remember my resume from my entry-level out of college resume, although it's probably somewhere in a filing cabinet. But, when I was in college, I was a journalism major, and I was there when Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested. So I actually covered the trial of Jeffrey Dahmer. You know what that is? That's a talking point. That makes me unforgettable when I put that on the resume. And people will have me in for an interview only because they want to ask me questions about that. So if you have something like that, if you worked at a bookstore and you rearranged the entire science fiction fantasy section, that is impressive.
Well, and think about it this way. If you're applying in an agency or an editor position, you have curated a list. Yeah. That's basically what you've done.
Yeah. And, the thing is everybody hiring wants a self-starter. We're looking for somebody with initiative who, I always say, I want somebody who can come in and tell me what to do. I want an assistant who comes in and goes, your database is a mess, so I want to completely rearrange it, and I think it'll be more efficient, rather than me go, it's pretty clear my database is a mess, but I don't have time to think about it. So if you can show on your resume times and instances where you took initiative, that's really big. So experience first, then education. And I know there's usually a section that people talk about that are skills. I think that, again, think about the position.
Well, and I think a lot of that will also come through in your experience. So you could either include it or you could repurpose it. Like there's so many, obviously there's going to be different formats and how you present yourself, but I think you could do it either way. I think that skills section could come through in your experience with all those bullet points, or you can still sort of recap them in the skills.
Yeah, and I mean, I think most people have basic computer skills, but seriously, personally, I wouldn't be mad at somebody who put in something like can ride a unicycle. Because again, I'm not going to forget the person who knows Microsoft Word, Airtable, and also can ride a unicycle.
Did you interview someone recently who can ride a unicycle?
No, but I would have had them in for an interview if they put it on my resume. I mean, you might not want to, but I do think, so you're applying to BookEnds. You've checked out the BookEnds website. You see BookEnds has a dog. You could put skills great with dogs. I mean, if we are crazy enough about animals to put them on a website, we probably would like to see that on your resume.
Yeah. And those, like you said, I think what's important about this and the cover letter, which we'll get to in another video, is that you are trying to prove that you're the right person for the job, but you're also trying to show who you are. Because once you get into these four walls, which these four walls are a lot more than four walls, but once you get into the company that you're working with, that hiring manager wants to know this person is going to fit in, we'll get along, and they'll be able to do the job, but we'll also be able to communicate and get along.
Yeah, and you really need to differentiate yourself. So in our last call, our open call for resumes, we got over 100 resumes in a week. And so many of them were completely forgettable.
Right. This is what I was going to say before and completely forgot, that all of that goes to setting you apart, because we are looking at these resumes over and over again. And if they all look the same, nothing is going to make me I'm not going to know what makes you stand out. I'm just going to have 50 resumes and I'm interviewing 50 people. No, that never works.
Right. But I will suddenly be like, I don't remember that one's name. Who was the one with the dog?
Right. Which we did. We did this time around.
Yeah. So we'll have those conversations. The other thing, you had mentioned references.
I did. Yeah. Because again, college advisors advise you to do that. Add at the end, references furnishable upon request, and put the people that you could get references from.
Yeah. I mean, they damn well better be. I mean, if I ask you for references, I know you're going to have them. Typically for me, if I'm going to call references, and personally, I don't all the time, but if I am, I'm going to dig through your jobs and not professors or people that you've already sourced as references. So I don't think you need to add sort of references available on request. If you have room and you need to fill up space, go right ahead. The other thing I really stood out to me with the resumes was how bland some of them looked. The first thing we do when we see a resume is how it looks.
Well, it's a quick once over glance. We open the document and then it's, okay, if this is all black and white and there's no dimension to it, right, it already makes my eyes gloss over.
Yeah, well, honestly, if it looks boring, it says you're boring. I'm not saying you are, but if I see a really super boring resume that's just a bunch of words on a plain white sheet of paper, it doesn't strike me as coming from somebody creative who's applying for a creative job.
Right,
so
but we did get a bunch that had, different font types with your name, had a picture on it, had a sidebar.
Yeah,
that it was really still legible. You still have to be able to read it. It's not too busy. It's not hard to look at. But there were ways that sort of differentiated it from the sea of other resumes that we did look at.
Yeah, and it's not complicated, honestly. Microsoft Word has about a bajillion resume templates.
Yeah, and Canva too. I think Canva does if you wanted a PDF version.
Yeah, so just pick one you like, but pick one. Don't just throw it up on a piece of paper. Obviously, at the top of your resume, like your career counselor says, you want your name, your address, you have a website, you want your phone number and an email address. One of the things that I felt was really missing from a lot of the resumes I saw was social media. I mean, we live in an era and a time where we actually spend probably more time on social media than we do in our house. So why we're not including that, but we're including our, our addresses. So if you don't have social media or don't want to include it, it will be found. So if you're not putting your Instagram on there because it's public and it's nothing but beer pong pictures, you might want to decide what you're going to do with that. You might, I'm not saying you have to get rid of it, but make it private and create a public account.
Right. There are discussions about this all the time. I mean, remember when I was in high school and in college, it was always, they will find you. They have ways to find you. And I think that's a big shift in being in college and being in school to, okay, now I'm trying to find a job in a professional setting where you have to do that. regardless, I think you should consider having a personal account and a professional account, or making sure that you have gone through your social media and got rid of all the kids stuff that you had on there, because people will find it. And that's not especially in publishing, we're so public and we do use our own social media to build a platform.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that everything on there is contributing to the image that you're going to try to build in the future. And it's better to do it now than later.
And I will tell you, it hurts you to have nothing. You know, I mean, I'm bringing on an assistant who is also going to be doing some social media stuff for me. So if I've done a search for you and I've looked on your resume and you have no social media, you know, you may have hit it all, which is fine, but that is also sort of a to me. The very least, you should have a LinkedIn account because you're doing a job search. But I think that including a LinkedIn account and maybe one other social media account it's just one of your other addresses, just like your home address and your phone number.
Right.
So I think it's important to include it instead of pretend it doesn't exist. And again, anybody I intended to interview, I Googled.
Yes. And she finds them every single time. Well, I have one other thing and I want to get your opinion on it, but one page.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Drives me bonkers. I don't know why, but I want to also see that you can self-edit yourself. Yeah. And, well, obviously self-edit yourself. I want to see that you can self-edit and that you are only including the points that are, you know, important and relevant, and that we're not sort of 3 pages in and I'm scrolling, because it's also easy to lose those.
Yeah, I don't care how long you've been working, how successful you've been, how many jobs you've had. We should all fit it on one page. So yeah, definitely. I mean, again, put it into perspective. We're going to review 100 of these. If I have to go through 3 pages of your stuff, you've lost my interest. Now you have me digging for what's important instead of you putting your best foot forward. And at some point, I want to just glance at it. I want the highlights to pop out at me, and then I want to be able to move on a yes or no.
Right.
These decisions on whether to consider someone to the next level are made pretty quickly in most cases.
Right.
So, you know, that's why it's important to really give information that pops and makes you stand out.
Yes. So we hope this was helpful. Everybody's going to have a different resume. That's kind of the beauty of it. So have fun creating yours. Make sure you're getting everything that you think needs to be on there, and keep an eye out for our next video on cover letters.
Oh, and one last thing, be prepared to have more than one resume.
Yes.
Depending on the jobs you're applying for, or maybe not so much the jobs, the different industries you're applying to, you will probably need different resumes. So be okay with that.
Well, hang on, because also the jobs in publishing, because a job with an agency and a publishing house are going to be different, and potentially with children's and adult might be different, or marketing and editorial might be different. So you could potentially have different ones even for the same.
Yeah, you might tweak them in some ways.
Right. Okay, well, that was really our final note. We hope it was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we hope to see you back here next time.
Bye.